And somewhere in the depths of space, Admiral Zara Voss stood on the bridge of a ship that once again appeared to be nothing more than a peaceful merchant vessel. She watched the stars and smiled, knowing that innocent people throughout the galaxy were a little safer because humanity had chosen to be their guardians. The age of unchecked aggression was over. The age of human protection had begun. Earth had shown its true face to the galaxy, and that face was not one of conquest or domination, but of courage, protection, an unwavering commitment to defending those who could not defend themselves. The galaxy would never be the same, Admiral. Korath Valken stood motionless on the observation deck of his flagship, the Eternal Dominion. The massive vessel stretched nearly 4 kilometers from bow to stern, its dark hull bristling with weapons that could reduce entire moons to cosmic dust. Around him, the 7th Imperial Fleet maintained perfect formation, 200 ships of various classes, each one a testament to the technological supremacy of the Zephyrian Empire. The Empire had ruled the galaxy for 12,000 years. They had conquered over 50,000 star systems, subjugated countless species, and established a civilization that spanned from the galactic core to the outer rim territories. To the Zephyrians, the universe was their birthright, and every species they encountered was either useful or expendable. "Sir," called Commander Nexus from the tactical station, his voice carrying the crystalline tones typical of their species. "The reconnaissance probes have completed their survey of system. Designation 2847 Gamma." Korath turned slowly, his tall frame casting long shadows across the bridge. Like all Zephyrians, he possessed an ethereal beauty that masked their utterly ruthless nature. His skin shimmered with a faint silver luminescence, and his eyes held the cold intelligence of a predator. Report: 9 planets orbiting a G-type star. The 3rd planet shows clear signs of intelligent life. They call themselves humans, and their world is designated as Earth in their primitive language. Nexus paused, reviewing his data. Initial assessment classifies them as a Class 9 civilization. Several officers on the bridge exchanged glances. Class 9 was the lowest possible rating for any species that had achieved spaceflight. It indicated a civilization so backward that it barely warranted Imperial attention. Most Class 9 species were left alone until the Empire needed their worlds for resources or strategic positioning. "Elaborate on their capabilities," Korath commanded, though his tone suggested he was already losing interest. "They have achieved crude, faster-than-light travel within the last 50 years. Their ships are small, inefficient, and rely on primitive fusion technology. Most importantly, they still engage in warfare among themselves and lack any form of unified planetary government." Nexus consulted his readings again. Their largest warship is approximately 800 meters long and carries what appear to be basic plasma weapons and kinetic projectiles. Korath almost smiled. The Eternal Dominion alone was 5 times longer than humanity's largest vessel. Population, approximately 8 billion, spread across their homeworld and a handful of colonies. In nearby systems, they appear to be a remarkably aggressive and territorial species, constantly fighting over resources and ideological differences. "Typical Class 9 behavior," Korath mused. "File them under future acquisition targets. When the 9th Fleet completes its current campaign in the Andorian sector, they can return to claim this system. The humans will either submit or be eliminated." As the Imperial Fleet continued on its patrol route, none of them noticed the tiny automated probe that had been trailing them for the past 3 months. The probe was no larger than a grain of sand and employed stealth technology that rendered it virtually invisible to Imperial sensors. It had been recording every conversation, mapping every ship, and analyzing every weapon signature far away on the dark side of Earth's moon. Dr. Maria Santos studied the probe's transmissions with growing concern. The underground facility around her buzzed with activity as hundreds of scientists and engineers worked on humanity's most classified project. The Prometheus research facility had been built in absolute secrecy over the past 20 years, carved deep into lunar bedrock and shielded from any form of detection. "They're calling us Class 9, Santos announced to the gathered team leaders, "which means we've succeeded in our deception." Dr. James Mitchell, the facility's chief engineer, nodded grimly. 8 years of carefully staged encounters with their scout ships. Every time they observe us, we make sure they see only our oldest, most primitive vessels. As far as they know, we're still using basic fusion drives and conventional weapons. Santos pulled up a holographic display showing the Imperial fleet. The massive ships rotated slowly in 3 dimensions, their weapon emplacements clearly visible. Their smallest destroyer is larger than our biggest publicly known battleship. If they knew what we were really capable of, they would have attacked immediately. The truth was that humanity had been preparing for this encounter since the first. Signs of galactic civilization had been detected 30 years earlier. While the general population remained unaware of the threat, the world's greatest minds had been working in secret to develop technologies that could level the playing field against an advanced galactic empire. Status report on Project Meridian. Santos requested Dr. Elena Baskis. The project's chief scientist activated another hologram. This one showed what appeared to be a sleek, organic-looking spacecraft unlike anything in Earth's conventional fleet. The UES Phantom is 96% complete. All major systems are operational and have passed extensive testing. The Phantom was humanity's desperate gamble. Instead of trying to match Imperial technology directly, human scientists had taken a completely different approach. They had developed biomechanical systems that could adapt and evolve in real time, quantum processors that could think and learn, and weapons that operated on principles the Empire had never encountered. The hull is composed of programmable matter infused with synthetic biological components, Vasquez continued. It can repair damage instantly, adapt to energy attacks, and even camouflage itself by mimicking the background environment. The armor literally learns from each attack and becomes stronger. Mitchell added, the weapon systems use quantum entanglement to bypass conventional shields entirely. Our projectiles exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously until they strike their target. Energy-based defenses are completely useless against them. Santos studied the specifications carefully. The Phantom was only 400 meters long, tiny compared to Imperial vessels, but size was deceptive. Every cubic meter of the ship was packed with revolutionary technology that represented the pinnacle of human ingenuity and desperation. The crew? Santos asked. Captain Elena Rodriguez and her team have been training for 3 years. They know every system, every capability, every potential weakness. The ship's AI, which we've designated Apollo, has formed a symbiotic bond with the crew that allows for unprecedented coordination and response time. The facility's communication system chimed, and a new voice joined the conversation. This is Captain Rodriguez. The Phantom is ready for final systems check. Request permission to begin Phase 7 trials. Santos looked around the room at her colleagues. These men and women had sacrificed everything to give humanity a fighting chance. Many had abandoned their families and previous lives to work in absolute secrecy on a project that might not succeed, but they all understood the stakes. If they failed, humanity would become just another conquered species in the Empire's vast collection. Permission granted, Captain. Begin final trials. Meanwhile, in the depths of space, the Imperial fleet continued its patrol. Admiral Corith reviewed reports from across the galaxy, cataloguing new worlds to conquer and resources to exploit. Earth was filed away as a minor priority, a backward world that could wait its turn for Imperial attention. The Zephyrians had conquered thousands of species over their long history. They had seen every possible form of resistance and had countered every technological innovation their enemies could devise. Their tactics were refined over millennia of warfare. Their weapons were perfected through countless battles, and their confidence was absolute. They had no reason to suspect that in a hidden facility on Earth's moon, human scientists had achieved breakthroughs that would revolutionize warfare itself. The Empire's intelligence was based on carefully orchestrated deceptions that made humanity appear primitive and harmless. Every public demonstration of human technology was deliberately scaled back to maintain the illusion of backwardness. But beneath the surface, in secret laboratories and hidden research facilities, humanity was preparing for a war unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. They were developing weapons that could think, armor that could evolve, and strategies that would exploit the Empire's greatest weakness, their complete and utter arrogance. As Admiral Corith's fleet disappeared into hyperspace, bound for their next conquest, they left behind what they believed to be a harmless species of primitives. In 8 years, when the Empire finally returned to claim Earth, they would discover the terrible cost of their underestimation. The galaxy was about to learn that humanity's greatest weapon was not their technology, but their ability to be consistently underestimated by those who considered themselves superior. The Empire had made the classic mistake of confusing deception with weakness, and that error would reshape the balance of power across the stars. 8 years later, Admiral Corith returned to the Sol system with a conquest fleet of 300 ships. The Eternal Dominion led the formation, followed by dozens of battleships, cruisers, and support vessels. This was meant to be a routine occupation, barely worth the attention of a senior Imperial commander. "Sir, we are detecting unexpected activity in the system," reported Commander Nexus. "Multiple human vessels are moving to intercept our fleet." Corith frowned. This was unusual. Most Class 9 civilizations either surrendered immediately upon seeing Imperial forces or scattered in terror. He had never encountered a species primitive enough to actually attempt resistance. "How many ships?" he asked. "Approximately 200 vessels of various classes. They appear to be the same primitive fusion-powered ships we observed 8 years ago." 200 ships against 300 Imperial vessels. Corith almost laughed. "This will be over in minutes. Signal the fleet to assume standard conquest formation. We'll crush their pathetic resistance and be done with this system before the day is out." What Corith didn't know was that the human fleet moving to meet him was indeed composed of older, conventional vessels. But they were not there to win the battle. They were there to provide cover and distraction for humanity's real weapon, hidden within an asteroid field on the outer edge of the system. The UES Phantom powered up its revolutionary systems. Captain Alina Rodriguez sat in the command chair. Her mind linked directly to the ship's quantum consciousness through bioneural interfaces that had been developed specifically for this moment. "Apollo, status report," she said quietly. The ship's AI responded not through speakers, but directly into her consciousness. All systems optimal, Captain. Quantum cores are stable. Bioarmor is fully responsive, and dimensional weapons are charged. And ready. I am detecting the Imperial fleet's approach vector. Rodriguez studied the tactical display that appeared in her mind. The Imperial ships were massive and numerous, but they were also following predictable patterns based on thousands of years of successful conquests. They expected to face conventional resistance using conventional tactics. Begin stealth approach, Rodriguez ordered. Take us behind their formation. The Phantom slipped through space like a ghost. Its adaptive hull shifted and flowed, bending light and energy around itself until it was virtually invisible. The ship's biomechanical nature allowed it to mimic the background radiation of space itself, making it undetectable to Imperial sensors. The battle between the human and Imperial fleets began exactly as Korath had predicted. Imperial plasma beams and antimatter torpedoes tore through human ships with ruthless efficiency. The primitive human vessels fought bravely, but their weapons could barely scratch Imperial hull plating. This is disappointing, Korath commented as he watched human ships explode one after another. I had hoped for at least a minor challenge, but then something unexpected happened. The surviving human ships began to retreat in what appeared to be a coordinated withdrawal. More surprisingly, their retreat was actually succeeding. Imperial targeting systems, which had been perfect moments before, were suddenly having difficulty maintaining locks on the human vessels. Sir, our weapons are experiencing targeting anomalies, reported the tactical officer. The enemy ships appear to be learning our firing patterns. Korath turned sharply. Explain. They're adapting their evasion patterns in real time each. Miss makes the next shot harder to land. It's as if their tactical computers are predicting our targeting algorithms. Unknown to the Imperial forces, the human fleet was receiving constant tactical updates from the Phantom. Apollo was analyzing every Imperial weapon, every firing pattern, every targeting solution, and transmitting counter-strategies to the human ships in real. But this was only the beginning. Rodriguez had positioned her ship directly behind the Imperial formation, and now it was time to reveal humanity's true capabilities. Apollo, drop stealth and target their flagship. The Phantom materialized, seemingly from nowhere, appearing directly behind the Eternal Dominion. To the Imperial crew, it was as if the enemy ship had simply teleported into existence. Impossible, Korath snarled. No ship that small could have penetrated our sensor grid. The Phantom was indeed small compared to Imperial vessels, but size was deceptive. As the Imperial fleet turned to engage this new threat, Rodriguez smiled. Grimly, fire dimensional torpedoes. What emerged from the Phantom's weapon ports defied Imperial understanding of physics. The projectiles seemed to flicker in and out of existence, following paths that curved through space in impossible ways. Imperial shields, designed to stop energy weapons and conventional projectiles, might as well have been made of paper. The first torpedo struck the Eternal Dominion directly amidships. Instead of exploding on impact, it phased through the ship's hull and detonated inside the vessel's reactor core. The massive flagship convulsed as internal explosions tore it apart. From within, shields had no effect. Screamed the tactical officer on another Imperial ship. The enemy weapons passed through our defenses as if they weren't there. More dimensional torpedoes lanced out from the Phantom, each one finding its target with perfect accuracy. Imperial ships that had seemed invincible moments before were dying by the dozens. Their advanced technology, refined over millennia of conquest, was useless against weapons that operated according to completely different physical principles. All ships concentrate fire on that vessel. Admiral Korith ordered from his damaged flagship. Destroy it at any cost. Hundreds of Imperial weapons turned toward the Phantom, unleashing enough firepower to sterilize a planet. Plasma beams, particle cannons, and antimatter warheads converged on the small human ship. But the Phantom's biomechanical hull was already adapting. As each weapon struck, the armor learned its characteristics and began to develop immunity. Energy attacks were absorbed and converted into power for the ship's own systems. Physical projectiles were deflected by hull plating that became harder and more resistant with each impact. Rodriguez felt the ship's pain as it absorbed the Imperial assault, but she also felt its adaptation and growth. The bioarmor was not just protecting them. It was evolving, becoming stronger and more resilient with every passing second. Return fire, she ordered. Target their weapon systems. The Phantom's quantum processors had analyzed every Imperial ship in the fleet. Apollo knew exactly where their reactors were located, where their weapons were positioned, and how to disable them with maximum efficiency. The dimensional weapons struck with surgical precision, crippling Imperial vessels without destroying them outright. As the battle continued, it became clear that the Imperial fleet was not just losing, it was being systematically dismantled by a single enemy vessel that should have been crushed by their overwhelming firepower. "Sir, we've lost over half the fleet," Commander Nexus reported, his voice strained with disbelief. "Our weapons are having no effect, but they're destroying us ship by ship." Korith stared at the tactical display in horror. In his 12 centuries of military service, he had never witnessed anything like this. The humans were using technology that shouldn't exist, fighting with tactics that defied everything the Empire knew about warfare. "How is this possible?" he whispered. "They were Class 9. They were primitives." The truth was beginning to dawn. On him, the Empire's assessment had been catastrophically wrong. They had been deceived, manipulated into believing that humanity was weak and backward while the humans prepared for this exact confrontation. "Sir, the Phantom is targeting us directly," Nexus announced. Korith looked up to see the small human ship approaching his flagship. The Eternal Dominion was heavily damaged, its weapons disabled, its shields failing. Around them, the rest of the Imperial fleet was either destroyed or crippled. "This is Captain Rodriguez of the UES Phantom." A voice crackled over the communication system. "Admiral Korith, you have 5 minutes to order your remaining ships to retreat from this system. If any Imperial vessel remains after that time, it will be destroyed." Korith's hands trembled with rage and humiliation. The Zephyrian Empire had never retreated from a battle. They had never been defeated by a primitive species. But as he watched the last of his battleships succumb to the Phantom's impossible weapons, he realized that pride was a luxury he could no longer afford. "All Imperial forces," he said through gritted teeth, "retreat to the edge of the system. Prepare for immediate hyperspace jump." The surviving Imperial ships, less than 50 out of the original 300, limped away from the battlefield. As they prepared to flee, Korith transmitted one final message to the human ship. "This is not over, Captain Rodriguez. The Empire will return with 1,000 ships, 10,000 ships if necessary. We will not be caught off guard again." The age of human expansion was about to begin, and the galaxy would tremble at the approach of the species that had been dismissed as primitive and harmless. Earth's prototypes had become humanity's salvation, and the Empire's arrogance had become their downfall.